The sound of ripping fabric echoed through the empty art room like a gunshot. 26-year-old Cassandra Pierce stood frozen as 3 senior boys surrounded her. One still holding a torn piece of her silk blouse in his fist. The new art teacher's hands instinctively moved to cover the exposed skin. But her eyes remained steady, focused on the small lens hidden in her vintage brooch that was recording everything. What these boys didn't know was that their reign of terror at Westfield Academy was about to end in handcuffs. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage and justice, if you're finding value in these real-life tales of standing up against bullying and harassment, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these important stories. And hey, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts or your own experiences with standing up to bullies. Your stories matter too, and this community we're building together is all about supporting each other. If you'd like to help us continue bringing these powerful, inspiring stories to those who need to hear them most, consider hitting the thanks button below this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, goes directly toward researching and sharing more stories that give hope to people facing similar situations. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, and for being part of this movement for change. Now, let's get back to Cassandra's jaw-dropping story. Look at that, Jackson Sterling laughed, waving the fabric like a trophy. Maybe now you'll learn to dress appropriately for school, Miss Pierce. It was 7:45 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Cassie had arrived early to prepare her classroom for the day's pottery demonstration. She'd been teaching at Westfield Academy for exactly 11 days, and already she'd become a target. The prestigious private school in Riverside Heights was known for its academic excellence, its million-dollar endowments, and its culture of protecting certain students no matter what they did. Jackson Sterling was one of those protected students, 6'3", blonde, captain of the lacrosse team, and son of the biggest donor to the school's new athletic complex. His friends, Braden Knox and Cooper Hayes, flanked him like bodyguards. They'd been stalking her since her first day, making comments about her clothes, her figure, her age. "You boys need to leave," Cassie said, her voice remarkably calm for someone whose professional attire had just been assaulted. "Now." "Or what?" Braden stepped closer, his breath reeking of energy drink and arrogance. "You'll tell Principal Fitzgerald he golfs with Jax's dad every Sunday." Cassie shifted her stance slightly, angling her brooch to capture all 3 faces clearly. The pin had been a gift from her sister, a detective with the Riverside Police Department. "Just a little insurance," her sister had said. "Teachers are vulnerable, especially young ones." "I'm giving you one chance to walk away," Cassie said, pulling her cardigan tighter around herself. This is your only warning." Cooper laughed, an ugly sound that bounced off the art room walls. "Warning, lady, you're the one who should be worried. Do you know what happened to the last teacher who tried to discipline us?" She did know. Mrs. Henderson, the previous art teacher, had lasted 3 months before having what the administration called a nervous breakdown. The real story, whispered in the faculty lounge, involved harassment so severe she'd developed panic attacks and couldn't enter the building without shaking. "I'm not Mrs. Henderson," Cassie said simply. "No," Jackson agreed, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You're younger, prettier, more fun to play with." The brooch captured it all. Every leer, every threatening step forward, every moment of intimidation. But Cassie knew that wouldn't be enough. These boys were used to getting away with everything. She needed them to escalate, to do something undeniable. Fun? Cassie moved toward her desk, knowing they'd follow. Is that what you call destroying property and sexual harassment? Sexual harassment? Braden scoffed. We haven't even touched you. Yet, Cooper added with a smirk. Ripping my clothing is assault, Cassie stated, reaching for her phone on the desk. And I'm calling security. Jackson's hand shot out, knocking the phone from her grip. It clattered across the floor, sliding under the pottery wheel. No, you're not. For a moment, the room went silent except for the hum of the kiln in the corner. Cassie stood perfectly still, calculating. 3 of them. 1 of her. The door was blocked, but she wasn't panicking. She'd been preparing for this moment since she accepted the job. You know what your problem is, Jackson said, moving closer. You think you're special. You think because you're some hotshot artist from New York that you can come here and change things. But this is our school. Our rules. Cassie had indeed come from New York, leaving a successful career as a freelance artist to teach. What the boys didn't know was why she'd made that choice. They didn't know about her younger brother, who'd been bullied so severely in high school that he'd attempted suicide. They didn't know she'd spent 5 years volunteering with anti-bullying organizations, documenting abuse, building cases that couldn't be ignored. Your rules, Cassie asked, backing toward the supply closet. Let me guess. Rich boys do whatever they want while everyone else suffers in silence. Now you're learning, Cooper said. Tell you what, Jackson said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. You apologize for that sexual harassment comment. Admit you dressed inappropriately. And we'll leave. Hell, I'll even pay for a new shirt. My dad owns a boutique downtown. Your dad owns half this town, Cassie observed, which is why you think you're untouchable. I don't think it, Jackson corrected. I know it. The supply closet door was locked, but Cassie had the key. She'd been keeping it locked since she noticed supplies going missing. Another form of harassment she'd been documenting. As she fumbled with the key, pretending to be more flustered than she was, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone's coming, Braden warned. So, Jackson shrugged. We're just talking to our teacher. The door opened, and 17-year-old Mira Patel peered in, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Cassie, with her torn blouse, the 3 boys surrounding her, the piece of fabric still in Jackson's hand. I forgot my sketchbook, Mira stammered. Get it and get out, Cooper ordered. But Mira didn't move. She was one of Cassie's best students, quiet but observant, always sketching in the margins of her notebooks. Her eyes met Cassie's, a silent question passing between them. It's okay, Mira, Cassie said carefully. These gentlemen were just leaving. No, Mira said suddenly, surprising everyone, including herself. I don't think they were. Jackson turned to face her, his expression darkening. Little girl, you don't want to get involved in this. I'm already involved, Mira said, her phone appearing in her hand. I'm live streaming this to my Instagram. 3,000 followers and counting. It was a lie. Mira had maybe 300 followers, and she wasn't streaming anything. But the boys didn't know that. Cassie saw the moment of panic flash across their faces before Jackson's arrogance reasserted itself. Turn it off, he commanded. No, turn it off, or you'll regret it. Like Mrs. Henderson regretted standing up to you, Mira shot back. The room went cold. Everyone knew you didn't mention Mrs. Henderson. It was an unspoken rule. like not talking about the cheating ring Jackson ran or the hazing rituals the lacrosse team conducted. You little... Braden started forward, but Cassie stepped between them. Enough, she said. Mira, please go to the office and ask them to send security. Security's not coming, Jackson said confidently. My dad pays his salary too. But Mira was already backing toward the door, her phone still raised. Then I'll call someone who isn't on your payroll. She disappeared into the hallway, and Cassie heard her running footsteps fade. The boys exchanged looks, suddenly uncertain. Their perfect crime scene had been contaminated by a witness. We should go, Cooper suggested. Not yet, Jackson said, his jaw tightening. Not until she learns her lesson. He stepped toward Cassie, and she let him, making sure the brooch captured his face clearly. When he reached for her again, she was ready. Don't touch me, she said clearly, for the recording. Or what? He grabbed her wrist, his grip painful. You'll add assault to your false accusations. The closet key was still in Cassie's other hand. She turned it quietly, hearing the lock click open behind her. Last warning, Jackson. He laughed and tightened his grip. You're not in a position to give warnings. That's when Cassie moved. In one smooth motion, she twisted out of his grip, pushed open the closet door, and stepped back inside, slamming it shut behind her. The boys heard the lock turn from the inside. What the hell? Braden pounded on the door. Open up! Inside the closet. Cassie finally allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. She had everything she needed on video assault, harassment, threats, and now false imprisonment as they tried to break down the door. But the real surprise was what she'd been preparing in this closet for the past week. Break it down, she heard Jackson order. The door shook as they threw their weight against it. Cassie calmly reached up to the shelf where she'd positioned her laptop, already connected to the school's Wi-Fi and logged into her cloud storage. With a few clicks, she began uploading the footage from her brooch cam, not just from today, but from every incident over the past 11 days. There was the time Jackson had cornered her in the parking lot, making graphic comments about her body. The day Braden had accidentally spilled paint on her dress. The afternoon Cooper had tried to take pictures up her skirt when she was bent over helping a student. Every moment of harassment, every threat, every small act of intimidation that they thought would go unnoticed. Guys, Cooper's voice sounded nervous, maybe we should just go. If that girl really was streaming, she wasn't streaming anything, Jackson snarled. And even if she was, my dad will handle it. He always does. The door shuttered again. Cassie checked the upload progress, 70% complete. She pulled out her personal phone, the one the boys didn't know about, and sent a single text to her sister, now. Outside the closet, she heard new voices, adult voices, but not security. These were teachers arriving early for the day. Perfect witnesses. What's going on here? That was Mr. Yamamoto, the calculus teacher. Just a misunderstanding, Jackson said smoothly. Miss Pierce locked herself in the closet. We're worried about her. Cassandra, Mr. Yamamoto called. Are you all right? I'm fine, Cassie called back. But I'm not coming out until proper authorities arrive. These boys assaulted me and are trying to break down the door. She's lying, Braden protested. We were just what? Another voice, Ms. Washington from the English department. Why is there a piece of fabric in your hand? Mr. Sterling, is that from Miss Pierce's blouse? The silence stretched out. Cassie watched the upload hit 100% and smiled. Everything was backed up now, safe from any attempt to delete or destroy evidence. "This is ridiculous," Jackson finally said. "We're leaving." "I don't think so." A new voice, one that made Cassie's smile widen. Detective Sarah Pierce had arrived, along with 2 uniformed officers. "Nobody's going anywhere until we sort this out." "You can't just do, you know who my father is." Jackson's voice had lost its smooth confidence. "Judge Sterling, yes, I know exactly who he is," Sarah replied. "Which is why I brought backup. Officers, please secure the scene." Cassie unlocked the closet door and stepped out. Her cardigan still clutched around her torn blouse. The art room was now crowded with teachers, officers, and the 3 boys who suddenly looked much younger and much more scared. "Cassie," Sarah said professionally, though her eyes showed concern for her sister, "do you need medical attention?" "I'm okay," Cassie assured her, "but I need to file a report for assault and attempted false imprisonment." "This is insane," Jackson exploded. "She's making it all up." "Right, guys." But Braden and Cooper were silent, their eyes fixed on the piece of fabric still clutched in Jackson's hand, damning evidence he'd forgotten he was holding. "There's something else," Cassie said, touching her brooch. "I've been documenting harassment from these 3 for the past 11 days. Everything is recorded and uploaded to a secure server." The room went completely silent. Even the other teachers looked shocked. They'd all known something was wrong, had seen the way certain male students treated female faculty. But nobody had ever fought back like this. "Recording without consent is illegal," Jackson tried desperately. "Not in common areas with posted security notices," Sarah corrected, "and not when documenting crimes against yourself." Principal Fitzgerald finally arrived, his face flushed and his tie askew. He took in the scene, his star students surrounded by police, his newest teacher with her clothes torn, his faculty watching everything with knowing looks. "What's the meaning of this?" he blustered. "Officers, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Sarah cut him off. "We have a victim, witnesses, physical evidence, and apparently extensive video documentation. These 3 are coming with us for questioning." "You can't arrest them," Fitzgerald protested. "They're minors. Their parents are already being notified," Sarah said, "and they're all 18. Legal adults, isn't that right?" "Boys." Jackson had just turned 18 2 weeks ago. His birthday party had been the social event of the season, attended by half the town's elite. Now that legal adult status was working against him. As the officers began reading them their rights, Mira reappeared in the doorway with half the student body behind her. Word had spread quickly through the school's social media networks. Everyone wanted to see the untouchable Jackson Sterling finally face consequences. "This isn't over," Jackson said to Cassie as an officer cuffed him. "My father will destroy you. You'll never teach again." Cassie met his gaze steadily. "Your father will be too busy trying to keep you out of jail to worry about me, and unlike you, I have nothing to hide." As they led the boys out, Cassie noticed something interesting. Several other female students were recording on their phones, and she heard whispers, "If Miss Pierce could do it." "I have videos too. Remember what Jackson did to Trinity at homecoming? And that substitute teacher last year?" The culture of silence was cracking, and Cassie had been the hammer that struck the first blow. Principal Fitzgerald turned on her, his face purple with rage. "You've just declared war on the most powerful families in this town. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "My job," Cassie replied simply. "Creating a safe environment for students to learn." "Your job," he laughed bitterly. Your job is whatever I say it is. And you're fired. Clear out your desk immediately." "Actually," Mr. Yamamoto spoke up, surprising everyone. "According to the teachers' union contract, she can't be fired without cause and due process. And I think we'd all be very interested to testify at any hearing about what we've witnessed here." Ms. Washington nodded. 11 days. And she's documented that much harassment. How many years have we all looked the other way? Other teachers were nodding too, shame and determination mixing on their faces. Fitzgerald looked around, realizing he was losing control of his faculty along with his students. "This conversation isn't over," he warned, then stormed out. Sarah lingered after the other officers left with the boys. "You okay? Really?" Cassie nodded, finally allowing herself to feel the adrenaline shaking through her system. "I knew what I was walking into when I took this job. Mrs. Henderson reached out to me through the anti-bullying network. She told me everything. And you came anyway. Because of what she told me. Someone had to stop them before they escalated even further." Cassie looked at the students still crowding the doorway. "And someone had to show these kids that standing up is possible." Mira pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. "Miss Pierce, I'm sorry I lied about the live stream. You were brilliant." Cassie interrupted, pulling the girl into a hug. "And brave? That took real courage. They're going to come after me now." Mira whispered. "No," Cassie said firmly. "They're going to be too busy with legal proceedings. And besides, I think you'll find you have more support than you realize." Already, other students were surrounding Mira, offering protection, sharing their own stories. The spell of fear that had held Westfield Academy was breaking as the crowd finally dispersed, and first period approached. Cassie surveyed her art room. There was still broken pottery from where the boys had been throwing their weight against the door. Her torn blouse would need to be kept as evidence. But the morning sun was streaming through the windows, and for the first time since she'd arrived, the room felt peaceful. She walked to her desk and picked up her phone from where Jackson had knocked it. 17 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. The Sterling machine was already mobilizing, but Cassie had her own machines, the anti-bullying network, the union, and now a school full of students and teachers ready to speak truth. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You've made a powerful enemy. Judge Sterling doesn't forgive." Cassie deleted it without responding and opened her laptop instead. The uploaded videos were safe in 3 different cloud servers and a flash drive in Sarah's possession. But there was more work to do. She began typing an email to the school board, CCing the state education department and several reporters who covered education issues. Subject: systemic failure to protect students and faculty at Westfield Academy. As she typed, Mira knocked softly on the door frame. "Miss Pierce, I know class is about to start, but could you teach us how to do what you did, the documentation? I mean, a lot of us have stories, but we don't know how to make people listen." Cassie looked up at her student, then at the others gathering behind her. These kids had been living in fear, accepting harassment as the price of education at an elite school. But now they had hope. "Of course," Cassie said. "In fact, let's make that today's art project. We'll create visual documentation journals. Art as evidence, as resistance, as truth-telling." The bell rang for first period. Students filed in, buzzing with energy. Everyone had heard what happened. Everyone was choosing sides. And surprisingly, most were choosing hers. As Cassie stood to address her class, still wearing her torn blouse like a badge of honor, she noticed something 3 empty seats where Jackson and his crew usually sprawled. But also, for the first time, every girl in the class was sitting up straight, making eye contact, taking up space. "Before we begin," Cassie said, "I want you all to know that what happened this morning is just the beginning. Change is coming to Westfield Academy. And if anyone experiences harassment, threats, or retaliation, you come to me. We document everything. We protect each other. We stand together." A hand shot up. Destiny Williams, usually too intimidated to speak. "Miss Pierce, what if they come back? What if their parents get them off? Then we'll be ready," Cassie promised. "With evidence, with witnesses, with the truth. The days of suffering in silence are over." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah. "Judge Sterling just called the chief. He's demanding your arrest for unlawful recording. Chief told him to pound sand. The prosecutor's already reviewing the videos. These boys are done." Cassie put her phone away and picked up a piece of chalk. On the board, she wrote, "Project Truth in Art, documenting our reality." "Now," she said, turning back to her students, "let's talk about how art can change the world." As her students leaned forward, eager to learn, Cassie thought about Mrs. Henderson, probably watching the news from her home in Minnesota, where she'd fled to heal. This was for her, for Trinity at homecoming, for the substitute teacher, for every girl who'd been told boys will be boys, for every woman who'd been told not to make waves. The waves were coming now, and Cassie Pierce was just getting started. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that in Judge Sterling's home office across town, 3 more boys were meeting: Jackson's younger brother, his cousins, his teammates. They were watching the social media explosion, reading the supportive comments for Miss Pierce, seeing their empire of fear crumble. "She thinks she's won," one of them said. "She's wrong," another replied, pulling out his phone. "We just need to be smarter about it." They didn't know about the brooch camera. They didn't know Cassie's sister was a detective. They didn't know that every art room in the school was about to become a safe space for documentation and resistance. Most importantly, they didn't know that Cassandra Pierce had only used a fraction of what she'd gathered. The real bombshell, the evidence that would bring down not just 3 bullies, but an entire system, was still waiting on her laptop, encrypted and ready. The war for Westfield Academy had only just begun. The video went viral at 2:17 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. Not the brooch cam footage that was still evidence in an ongoing investigation. This was something entirely different. Something that would shake Westfield Academy to its foundations. Cassie was teaching her 5th period ceramics class when phones started buzzing throughout the room. Students glanced at their screens, eyes widening, gasps escaping. Within minutes, the carefully controlled narrative that Judge Sterling had been spinning through his media contacts exploded. "Miss Pierce?" Destiny Williams held up her phone with a trembling hand. "You need to see this." On the screen was a TikTok video, already at 500,000 views and climbing. The caption read, "Westfield Academy's dirty secret, how deep does it go?" The video showed clear security footage from the school's own cameras. Timestamp from 6 months ago. Mrs. Henderson, the previous art teacher, cornered in a supply closet by not just Jackson Sterling, but 6 other male students. The audio was clear. The threats were explicit. And most damning of all, at the end of the footage, Principal Fitzgerald's voice could be heard, "Boys will be boys. Mrs. Henderson, perhaps if you dressed more conservatively, "Where did this come from?" Mira asked, though her eyes were already turning to Cassie with dawning realization. Cassie maintained her poker face. "I couldn't say, but whoever posted it clearly had access to the school's security system. What she didn't say was that Mrs. Henderson had given her the footage before leaving town. The traumatized teacher had managed to download it before Fitzgerald had the files deleted. But she'd been too broken, too scared to use it. She'd passed it to Cassie like a baton in a relay race for justice. "There's more," another student said, scrolling rapidly. "There are 12 videos, 12 going back 3 years. Each video showed similar scenes. Female teachers cornered, threatened, harassed. Female students subjected to locker room talks that crossed every line. And in several videos, adult voices dismissing, minimizing, covering up. The systematic protection of predators was laid bare for the world to see. Cassie's phone rang, Sarah's name on the screen. "You seeing this?" her sister asked without preamble. "My whole class is watching it spread in real time." Cassie confirmed. "The prosecutor just called an emergency meeting. The FBI might get involved. This could be federal civil rights violations. Can you come to the station after school?" "Of course!" Cassie noticed Principal Fitzgerald storming past her classroom windows, his face purple with rage, his phone pressed to his ear. "I think the aftermath is about to hit." She was right. The intercom crackled to life moments later. "All students and faculty are to report to the gymnasium immediately for an emergency assembly." As they filed out, Cassie felt a hand on her arm. Mr. Yamamoto stood beside her, his usually composed face showing raw emotion. "My daughter graduated from here 5 years ago," he said quietly. "She never told me, but I knew something happened her senior year. She changed, became quiet, withdrawn. Now I wonder." "It's not too late," Cassie told him. "These videos might give her and others the courage to speak up." The gymnasium was chaos. Parents who'd seen the videos were already arriving, some in tears, others in fury. The school board members present looked like they'd been hit by a truck. And, in the center of it all, Principal Fitzgerald stood at the microphone, trying desperately to regain control. "Please, everyone, settle down," he shouted. "These videos are being taken out of context. They're clearly edited, manipulated. That's school security footage," a mother yelled from the crowd. "Are you saying your own cameras lie?" "What I'm saying is," he was cut off as the gym doors burst open. Jackson Sterling's younger brother, Preston, marched in with 5 other boys from the lacrosse team. They moved with purpose toward the microphone, and Cassie felt her instincts prickle. Something was about to happen. "Can I say something?" Preston asked, his voice carrying his brother's same entitled tone. The crowd quieted. Curious, Fitzgerald, grasping for any distraction, handed him the microphone. "Of course, Preston, please." Preston turned to face the crowd, his eyes scanning until they found Cassie. "My brother made mistakes," he began, "but he's being crucified by a teacher who came here with an agenda. Miss Pierce isn't some innocent victim. She's a plant, sent by radical feminist organizations to destroy traditional values at our school." Cassie almost laughed at the absurdity, but the scary thing was, some parents were nodding. The Sterling influence ran deep. "She deliberately entrapped my brother," Preston continued, warming to his theme. "Dressed provocatively, created situations where normal teenage boy behavior would seem inappropriate. Normal." Mira Patel stood up, her voice cutting through the gym. Your brother ripped her clothes off. That's normal to you. Sit down, Preston snapped. But Mira remained standing. And then another girl stood. Then another, soon. Dozens of female students were on their feet, silent but powerful. Preston's confidence wavered. This is exactly what I mean. She's turning students against each other. Creating division, no. A new voice from the crowd. Trinity Washington, captain of the debate team, stepped forward. She's giving us permission to tell the truth. And here's mine. Jackson Sterling assaulted me at homecoming. I reported it. Principal Fitzgerald told my parents I was confused, that I'd been drinking, I don't drink, and that pressing charges would ruin a good boy's future. The gymnasium erupted. More girls began speaking up, shouting their stories over the chaos. Parents turned on Fitzgerald with fury. Board members tried to restore order. And through it all, Cassie noticed Preston and his crew backing toward the exits, but they hadn't counted on Sarah Pierce and her fellow officers being stationed at every door. Going somewhere? Gentlemen, Sarah asked Preston. Because we have some questions about threatening messages sent to witnesses in your brother's case. Funny how they all came from IP addresses linked to your devices. As Preston and his accomplices were escorted out for questioning, the assembly devolved into complete chaos. Parents demanding answers, students sharing stories, teachers finally speaking up about what they'd witnessed and ignored. Cassie slipped out a side door, needing air. In the parking lot, she found Mrs. Washington sitting on a bench, tears streaming down her face. 30 years, the older teacher said. 30 years I've worked here, watched this happen, said nothing. I'm so ashamed. Cassie sat beside her. You were in a system designed to silence you. What matters is what we do now. That was you. Wasn't it the videos? Cassie remained silent, but Mrs. Washington nodded knowingly. Thank you for being braver than the rest of us. They sat quietly for a moment. Then Mrs. Washington asked, What do you think happens now? Now, Cassie looked back at the gymnasium where history was being rewritten in real time. Now we rebuild. But first, we tear down everything rotten. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. But she recognized the area code Minnesota. She answered. Cassandra, Mrs. Henderson's voice was barely a whisper. I saw the videos. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Cassie corrected. Your evidence, my platform. Together. The news says the FBI is investigating, that Fitzgerald might face charges. Is it true? It's true, and it's just the beginning. How are you doing? There was a long pause. Better. Seeing those boys arrested, seeing the truth come out. It's like I can breathe again. Thank you. After they hung up, Cassie walked back toward the school. The parking lot was filling with news vans. The story had gone national. Elite private school's culture of abuse exposed by brave teacher, read one Kiran. Inside, she found her classroom occupied by an unexpected visitor. Judge Sterling sat at her desk, his expensive suit impeccable, his expression cold as winter. Miss Pierce, he said without preamble, let's discuss terms. There are no terms, Cassie replied, staying near the door. Your son committed crimes. He'll face justice. Justice, Sterling laughed bitterly. You've destroyed my family, my reputation, everything I've built in this town. No, Judge, your son destroyed those things when he chose to assault women. You destroyed them when you chose to protect him instead of his victims. Sterling's composure cracked. $50,000. Cash. You leave town tonight. Drop all charges. Sign an NDA. No, 100,000. No amount of money will make this go away. Everyone has a price. Then I guess I'm not everyone. Cassie pulled out her phone, making sure he could see she was recording. This conversation is over. Please leave my classroom. Sterling stood slowly, his facade finally crumbling completely. You think you've won. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I have judges who owe me favors, politicians in my pocket, and all of that means nothing when the FBI has video evidence of your son committing federal hate crimes. Cassie interrupted. Oh, did I forget to mention 3 of his victims were targeted specifically because of their race? That makes it a federal case. Your local connections won't help you there. Sterling's face went white. He hadn't known about that aspect. Without another word, he fled the room. Cassie sank into a chair, exhaustion finally hitting her. It had been only 2 days since the confrontation in her classroom, but it felt like a lifetime. Her phone showed 57 missed calls from reporters, 17 from parents wanting to thank her, and 1 from the superintendent of schools. She called the superintendent back. Miss Pierce? Dr. Angela Morrison's voice was warm. I'm calling to inform you that the board has just voted unanimously. Principal Fitzgerald has been terminated effective immediately, and we're placing the entire administration under review. We'd like to offer you a position on the reform committee we're establishing. I appreciate that, but I'm a teacher. That's where I belong. I understand. But Cassandra, what you did here, it's going to change everything. Not just at Westfield, but at schools across the country. You've started something. After they hung up, Cassie looked around her art room. Tomorrow, her students would return. They would create, learn, grow all without fear for the first time in years. That was worth more than any committee position. A soft knock drew her attention. A young woman stood in the doorway, probably early 20s, nervous but determined. Miss Pierce, I'm Rebecca Martinez. I graduated from Westfield 3 years ago. I was one of Jackson's victims. No one believed me then, but maybe now. Come in, Cassie said gently. Tell me your story. I'll make sure people listen. As Rebecca began to speak, her voice growing stronger with each word, Cassie thought about ripples in a pond. One stone thrown her decision to stand up had created waves that would spread far beyond Westfield Academy. Outside, the sun was setting over Riverside Heights. The Sterling family mansion on the hill no longer looked imposing, just sanded and isolated. Downtown, in the police station, 3 18-year-old boys were learning that money couldn't buy their way out of everything, and in homes across town. Conversations were happening, difficult, necessary conversations about consent, power, and the price of silence. 6 weeks later, Cassie stood in the same spot where Jackson had torn her blouse. The art room looked different now, brighter somehow, though nothing physical had changed. What had changed was the energy. Students worked freely, laughed openly, created boldly. Miss Pierce, Mira called out, working on a sculpture. Did you see the news Jackson got 15 years? Federal prison. Cassie had seen. She'd also seen that Preston Sterling had been expelled and was facing his own charges, that Principal Fitzgerald was under indictment for obstruction of justice, that Judge Sterling had resigned in disgrace and was under investigation for corruption. But more importantly, she'd seen Trinity Washington accepted to Yale, seen Rebecca Martinez become an advocate for survivors, seen her fellow teachers stand taller, speak louder, Protect fiercely. Seen Westfield Academy transform from a haven for predators into a model for safe schools nationwide. I saw, she told Mira. But that's not the most important news. What is? Cassie gestured around the room where students of all backgrounds worked together, supported each other, created fearlessly. This is, we didn't just stop the bad, we built something good. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Henderson. Starting my new teaching job tomorrow. Different state. Fresh start, but this time, I'm wearing a camera. Thank you for showing me how to fight back. Cassie smiled and put her phone away. She had a class to teach, art to create, young minds to nurture. The hidden camera in her brooch had been retired, displayed now on her desk as a reminder not of fear, but of courage, not of what they'd endured, but of what they'd overcome. The war for Westfield Academy was over. The building of something better had just begun, and in art rooms across the country, teachers inspired by Cassandra Pierce's story were putting on their own brooches, standing a little straighter, ready to protect and serve the students who needed them most. Because, sometimes, changing the world starts with refusing to let them tear your blouse. Sometimes, it starts with pressing record. And sometimes, it starts with one teacher saying, "Enough." Students laughed freely now, their voices no longer hushed with fear. In the corner, a new student, shy, uncertain, picked up a brush for the first time. Cassie watched her tentative strokes bloom into confidence, knowing this was why she'd fought so hard. This moment, this freedom, this chance for every child to create without fear. The new student's name was Maya, and she reminded Cassie of herself years ago, quiet, observant, carrying invisible wounds. As Maya's brush moved across the canvas, other students began gathering around, not to judge, but to encourage. "That's really good," one said softly. "Can you teach me that technique?" Cassie felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she'd fought for, not just the absence of fear, but the presence of community. The art room had become a sanctuary where creativity flourished, and kindness was the only currency that mattered. Through the window, she could see the memorial garden students had planted for Mrs. Henderson. Purple flowers, her favorite colors, swayed in the breeze. The woman who'd tried to destroy so many young artists had inadvertently created an army of advocates. Former students, now served on school boards, became teachers, opened art therapy centers. Maya looked up from her painting, a tentative smile breaking across her face. "Miss Pierce, thank you for making this a safe place." Cassie knelt beside her. "You make it safe by being here, by being brave enough to create. Never forget that." As the bell rang and students reluctantly packed up, Cassie knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students who needed what this room offered. But she was ready. They all were.